I'm Victoria Schuler, and I'm a Senior Manager of HR Products and Services with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. So my job is to make sure that Canadian agriculture has HR business practices that are incorporated and they're driving the business results. I'm really keen on showing, especially small businesses, the link and the connection between HR business practices and how it can improve your outcome, how it can lower your turnover, or even make your job as a business owner, and especially small business owner, easier. So that's why we're talking about implementing an HR policies. The webinar is like lunch and learn. So if you're having your lunch, please enjoy it. And we were planning for 45 minutes, but since we have like less people, maybe even more questions, like we will be here for up to an hour. And if we finish earlier, you'll just get back like some of your lunchtime earlier. So let's dive in. This is just the typical scenarios that can happen at like any small business when like you have a supervisor and supervisor comes up to you with a question that one of our team members is always using his cell phone at work, and like not only during the lunchtime, but during the shift or like during visiting the customer. And I reminded that you kind of shouldn't be doing that when you're on the job. But the worker said that he actually needed to keep in touch with his family members, and he was quite upset about it. And the family members might be like in another country or in another time zone. So he really needed to talk to them about something, and it's been consistent. So what should we do next? How do we respond to this employer? How to this situation? How, like, is there anything we can do? And this is where HR policies may come, and we can talk about like how to create an HR policies on using cell phone devices at work. Let's look at another scenario. We have just hired a part-time worker, and this part-time worker like has been showing up wearing sandals to work, and your policy is to have a steel-toe shoes, and from the day one. And like your foreman is kind of concerned that the worker might be getting injured and doesn't know how to address the situation. They already had a conversation, but the worker said, "Oh, I just forgot. I'm more comfortable. I don't need it." And they keep showing up wearing their flip-flops. Maybe we should have an HR policy for that as well. And this is another scenario that some of our clients also had to face when you are an owner of a nursery, and a grocery retailer, like a major one, approached you asking if we can supply some fresh product to them. And after some discussion, they have showed the supplier code of conduct, which requires to have a specific HR policies in place. And we don't actually have any like formal policy manual. Everyone knows what they're doing. Where should we start? Like what kind of policies we need to do, like to be eligible for that code of conduct and not to lose that supplier, not to lose that chain. So that's where HR policies come in place. So what we are going to talk about, like what is an HR policy, why is it important, steps how to develop it, how to develop an HR policies that people either like read. I actually say as an HR practitioner, I don't think anyone read an HR policies from start to finish unless it is an HR or it is a lawyer. The HR policies often are being read when there is a situation that you refer to an HR policy, but we'll talk about it later. And also how to align your HR policies with your values and your workplace culture. Like when you like the paper says one thing, but everyone else is doing the different thing. Like, and you kind of see that it's not aligned. And also how to implement an HR policies. So that's what we're going to focus today on. And we'll start with like, what is HR policy and why is it important? Does anyone want to say in the chat if you have any HR policies in your business? And if yes, maybe what kind of HR policies? But an HR policy is a formal set of guidelines and procedures that define how an organization manages its workforce. This is a very simple, basic definition of the HR policy. So if your business has any formal HR policies, send us this in the chat and let us know what kind of HR policies do you have. And what are the benefits of having HR policies? There are benefits, and first it is consistency. When certain situations keep happening, we know how to deal with them, like in a consistent manner. The most important part is compliance. Like there are certain HR policies that we need to have in order to stay compliant, in order to avoid any like lawsuits from like former employees that were terminated like wrongfully or and so on. And HR policy also gives clarity to everyone in the company on, again, like what to do and how to act in certain situations. A lot of small businesses kind of feel overwhelmed, and especially when you go and look like into the like HR toolkits, like for example, CAHRC has an HR toolkit, or even if you purchase HR toolkit from like other sources, the HR policies like employee handbooks could be like 30, 80 pages long. Like, do I need it? Like, what shall I do? And our recommendation is to start from small, even if you have like one HR policy on, like, for example, like terms of employment, like when do the people start and when do the people finish? Or like an HR policy, what to be done and how to report an absence, whom to contact, at what time, before, like what time, at what time of the day, and so on. Like, even if it's one page, even if it's a half page, even if it's in a binder, like this is a good start for building your HR policies. For the small business, like the like recommendation is usually start with terms of employment, with like compensation and benefits, how employees are paid, are there any benefits, how they're calculated, leave, performance, are there any performance reviews, disciplinary actions, like is there any progressive discipline policy, health and safety and security, that's what we need, food safety, biosecurity, animal welfare if we're dealing with animals, code of conduct, and respecting others. Like this is like anti-harassment HR policy would be included there. So this is kind of the basics, but you don't need to have all of them. Like you can just start from a small, like as I said, like a half a page, like just like write down what happens right now, like in the company that everyone knows, but put it on paper and it will be a good start. This is like a more like a breakdown if you want to like go further. Like for example, when we talk about terms of employment, like we talk about like orientation, like our working hours, like probation, attendance, information privacy, like kind of like more like broadening it up. When we talk about compensation and benefits, like pay, deductions, when is the payday, how the time is recorded, like how the overtime like is recorded or paid, is it requested, like how vacations are requested, like what are like the statutory holidays, and like what kind of benefits we provide to our employees. Leave, like do you provide any like sick days, can an employee request like a personal leave, like how many days a year, any other leaves, like again, like how we need to inform if I'm sick today and I'm not like showing up to work. Performance, are there any performance reviews, how often do they happen, is it like an annual performance review? Training, is it like a mandatory training, or is there like a training credit of like $300 that employee can like choose like and go to any training? Does it need to be approved by HR or like a manager? Like promotion and recognition, and like end of service, like how we like what is happening at the last day, like how we're handing over the clients, the files, equipment, like tools, and so on. Disciplinary actions, like in terms of like progressive discipline, like just break it down, like are we starting with like a warning, is there a first like reading warning. A second reading warning, like what is the termination, like when the termination can happen, like effective immediately, like what are the situations, what are the cases. Safety and security, when we talk about employee health and safety, how we report accidents and injuries, like first aid, where the first aid kit is located, who is trained at first aid, like what are the emergency procedures, like children on the farm, it's more like related to like grain operations, not landscaping businesses, but if there are like children or family members and so on. Um, Food safety, probably wouldn't say much about that. And the code of conduct, like for the employees, like what is the dress code? Are you providing any work clothes? Or like there is a certain like acceptable like wear that employees are expected to wear, like personal property. Do the employees keep their like property in the lockers? Smoking, like substance and alcohol use, transportation, travel, like parking. What about like transportation or travel if employees using their vehicles for work, or like parking, equipment, tools, and vehicles? Like what are we doing with the tools? Like how often are the tools replaced? If if certain tool or equipment is damaged, like what are the situations? Who is going to pay for that? Like it can be like it can go on for like forever. Respecting others, like harassment and discrimination, like accommodation of needs, diversity and inclusion, resolving conflicts. It does look overwhelming, but like again, as I mentioned, like you don't need to do it at the same time, at the same day. Just pick, like I would recommend just like sit down and figure out what are top 5 questions that like your employees keep asking you, like especially the new employees, and like you need to explain over and over, like, and this would probably be the top 5 policies that would be a good start for the policies or for the employee handbook for a small business. There is a certain legislation, certain requirements depending on the jurisdiction where some policies are required, like health and safety, workplace violence, workplace harassment, like personal information protection, like hazard-specific policies and procedures. It depends on the province, so we recommend to check it out with your like, provincial authorities. And also, like new HR policies, if the HR policies were created, say, like years ago, are you up to date? Do you have the policy on equity, diversity, and inclusion and respectful workplace? Like COVID policy, like we probably should like keep it still. Like hopefully there is no other COVID. What are the emergency procedures during natural disasters, especially in the areas where there are like wildfires? Mental health and well-being. This is another like policy that is kind of getting popularity right now, especially among younger generations, of flexible work arrangement. If you have any employees that are like more of admin employees, like how they're working, do they have to come to the office, or they can work like at home 2 days a week? What is happening with their like computer, with their like equipment and so on? This is something that you could also include into the HR policies. How to develop an HR policy. The steps are quite simple, and I would probably like just start with like writing down those like 5 top questions if I'm a manager. And if the company is a bit larger, then like there are certain people that could be involved and probably should be involved in the developing of the HR policies from the beginning. Because if you feel like that you have a word in a certain policy, you will like follow it, and you will likely be able to like sell it and help to implement to other employees. And like we'll start with the HR manager. If there is no HR manager, it could be like manager or business owner, supervisor, because supervisors deal with employee questions all the time. Just employees, like just like what are your questions that you would like to see in writing? Or you can also ask employee that maybe just joined the company like 3, 6 months ago, a year ago, and ask them like what are the things that you didn't understand how it works in the company and in the business, and you would like to have it in writing, and it would help you with your onboarding process. You can also involve external legal counsel or external HR consultant. Like legal counsel will make sure that the policies are compliant with the employment legislation. External HR consultant, um, I'm an HR consultant as well, and I would really get someone who would understand the business. If your small business works with the small business, and don't bring you like a 20 pages HR policies if you only need like 1 page. And like again, like different people may have different roles. Like for example, like provide advice and policy development, provide feedback, like draft the policy as we explained. But I would like for the small business, I would recommend first include the supervisor, include the employees, try to draft it yourself. And if you're not sure, like maybe send it to the HR consultant or send it to the legal counsel. That would be my steps and how I would recommend doing that. Steps in developing HR policy. We consider the legal and business environment, like what are we like a family business? What are we operating? Like why do we need the HR policy? We are drafting the policy, and for drafting the policy, I know that sometimes it can be hard and people are getting overwhelmed or like procrastinating with like kind of like thinking about it. I would recommend just like sit down, like don't think about anything and do like 5 bullet points on like each policy and just try to like type it or like break it down. Like you don't need to use like legal language and leave it for a day and come back to it. But like you need to start from something, and even if it's like in a very like simple language, it will help your employees to understand it as well. And also like legal counsel or HR consultant can always like check it and correct it and so on. So we draft it, we review the policy, and we review the policy with employees, with a supervisor, with an HR consultant, with the legal counsel. We ask employees and supervisors for their input. Will it actually work? Does it make sense? Do you want to add anything? And after we introduce the policy, we are going to talk about how the policy can be introduced as well. So there's 4 simple steps. Breaking down more, like consider legal and business environment. What are the legislation and like how does the policy support the desired work environment? How will the policy be monitored or enforced? And does a policy align with your business values? These are kind of basic questions that where we start. And we review all the information. Again, you can use the template. You can build your own. There are lots of templates. Usually it's like the name of the policy, like what is it related for, the date, and you can just do even like bullet points. I like the policies that are bullet points and that are 1 page long. This is like, there is a hope that employees will actually read it. If we are using the template, these are kind of the elements that are recommended to be included, like overview, policy details, responsibilities of the like employees of the employer, consequences, like if certain things are not happening, if you keep using your cell phone at work after you had like a first and second and third conversation with a supervisor, what is going to happen, and also definition, like what is a cell phone or even like a personal device, electronic device. Like maybe we're not talking about cell phones. Maybe someone is like keep listening to the podcast and like doesn't understand that there are certain hazards, and because like they have a headphones and they can't hear it, that could be included as well. When we review the policy, like as I mentioned, we get the input from members and from the management team. We also check the grammar. We check the comprehension. We also like do some like basic formatting. Get a lawyer or HR consultant to review if you are uncomfortable, if this is your first policy, and also revise it based on the feedback. And to introduce the policy, first, like a management team need to understand it, and they need to completely agree and completely approve it. And after, we can hold a meeting with the staff to introduce and review the policy and provide a copy of policy to each employee. Like you can either like print it, or if there is like internal website, you can provide a scan code, like a QR code. Like there are ways what can be done. So that's kind of the next step. And after, like especially for the policies that are required by law, we get each employer to sign and acknowledge the policy. Also, like what I wanted to mention, when we do the training, like with the employees, it's always good to use a certain examples, like not just use like a dry legal language, but examples from a certain work environment that would help. And we integrate the policy in HR processes during orientation or onboarding of new employees, and schedule like a regular review and update like every year, or if it's not possible, at least every 2 years. And also if there are any changes that are important from the legal perspective, you need to provide, you need to make sure that you have a written acknowledgement of updated policies. Also, that's kind of from the experience, if you have like an employee handbook and it's like, I don't know, even 20 pages, right? For some people, we all have ADHD these days, like we can't read 20, like we can just skip through it. Like if you want to make sure that the new employee actually like read it or understands the policy, I don't know, create a quiz with like 10 questions, like A, B, C, D, and make sure they answer this. And if they don't answer, you can ask them, why do you think so? Like the answer to this question can be found in this policy. Go and read it and kind of like do it again. So this will double check like whether someone read the policy or not. Or you can just have a conversation when somebody is giving you the acknowledgement, like have like top 3 questions that like are kind of hidden, like or like somewhere in your HR policies that somebody would know only if they read it. And like you will know if the person would read it or not. And also, we talked about HR policies and employee handbooks. There is a difference between that. Like HR policies are more of a like legal document that is intended for HR and management, and it's like comprehensive and detailed, especially in larger businesses, and like more formal. If you would like to have an employee handbook that is like less formal, like you can also do like a shorter version, but refer to certain policies so that if an employee has more questions, they can refer to the policies. Some businesses do that, and it actually helps with getting employee handbook read through by the new employees. And like they're quite brief and they're easy to understand and they're simple language, and there is no reference to like this employment regulation, that employment regulation, and so on. It's just like kind of set of rules that the employee can like easily read and remember. This is kind of example of like if we talk about workplace harassment policy, like the formal policy would include an overview, policy details, responsibility, consequences, what if, and definitions. And if we talk about the employee handbook, and we have a section on workplace harassment, we can just have like the company commitment to harassment-free workplace, what harassment look like in the workplace, like provide some examples, and what to do if you witness a violation. So less formal, like and more like 1, 2, 3, 4 that are more easy to understand and comprehend. Creating an HR policy. For example, if we talk about code of conduct, like what we think first is what are the core values of our business, and what are the areas that could be included into the like code of conduct, like a conflict resolution. Like we could also include the values and how we want employees to act with customers or with each other if there is a conflict, if there is an unresolved conflict. And at the same time, we also need to ask the questions ourselves, like if we are managers or business owners, do we also follow this course of action or not? Because if we are not, this policy will just remain on paper. Cell phone policy. Yeah, this is like we just write down the situation. In what situation should employees be allowed to use their cell phones? I know that some employers would say, like, I provide you with a cell phone, you can leave your cell phone at the locker. Or like you have a cell phone and I'm giving you like a cell phone allowance and I need to be able to contact you. But you can use the cell phone for your personal use, like during the breaks and during the lunchtime. But at the same time, if like a piece of equipment broke down, you need like an employee can take a picture and send it to somebody, right? in what situation should they not use cell phones. So we'll just break it down. Like, as I mentioned, it is very important to align the HR policies with values and workplace culture. We identify our values and culture and know the values that like credibility, like that everyone has, like we kind of think about our unique values. We review policy, identify the gaps, and we engage stakeholders, owners, managers, supervisors, and we address gaps and communicate them if it doesn't align with our values. How to implement a new policy. There are certain steps that like usually employers would take. It's like plan the implementation, gain approval, make the announcement, make it official, provide the training, like provide an opportunity for questions from the employees, answer those questions, and integrate this policy in the process and make this policy your everyday life. How to integrate HR policies into the process. First is the orientation. So when the employee starts during onboarding, we give that employee handbook, or we like provide like a link to the resource where it's on the website, on the company website, or like we have that quiz to make sure that they actually read through the policies, or we can sit down with employees and just go one by one if we have time for that. We provide training, and training if it's a new policy and it's important to introduce the policy to the employees. We just have a meeting. It could be even like an informal meeting during the lunch, and that's where we kind of read the policy, provide examples, get the feedback, and kind of go through the case studies, go through the scenarios, what's happening in which situations. If we see that the policies are not followed, or we are still like on the integration stage, we just sit down with employee and we have that conversation that, yes, we've done that, we've done this, but from now on, we have this like in the policy. We both agreed on that during the development process. So maybe we should like, can we continue like doing that as we agreed? Or if for some reason, like an employee finds hard to follow that policy, maybe we need to go back and review and see what's happening. Why is it not working? What can be reviewed? What needs to be reviewed? And update existing processes and implement new. Tips for effective communication. Communication is key. Is communicate in a different way. So we can use emails, we can use handouts, we can use printed materials, we can use training, we can use coaching. There are a number of options how it can be done, and especially with the development of the digital technology, as I mentioned, like we can, like even if it's a small business, it can be a Google Drive or it can be a Google Classroom, like, and you can provide the QR code that everyone can access from their phone. Also, there is a lot of way how like the policies, like you can also like record a video if you want to go through something, and that can be used for the orientation and for the training. Coaching, that's when we kind of ask the questions like, why do you think we are doing that? Like what can be done differently? Like just kind of making sure that employee will like get the answer to this question by themselves. Make the policies accessible, print online posters, like you can have a policy or like a binder with the manual accessible on the reception, or you can give like a printout like in a smaller format that employees can have in their vehicle, or if there is like a poster like certain policy that you would like to put in the lunchroom. Schedule periodic reviews and updates. We talked about that. And establish clear expectations, especially with the family members, because if there are family members involved in the business, they may think that the policies are like not for family members, it's only for hired employees. The policies will only work if everyone follows them, including the manager, including the business owner, including all the family members. When we're talking about like holidays, for example, or like any other policies. This is an example how like HR policies can be used to address certain issues. Like for example, in Ottawa, like farm over like was taken to court during not having a COVID protocols, like not following the protocols. So if there are certain policies on like emergencies on COVID, that would have helped. Or like that's another one, like especially with marijuana, like what to do if we think that the employee is high at work, or if they're driving equipment, or like you don't even know, like you probably need to kind of have like a policy on that, like on like using substances, on like smoking or alcohol drug use policy that would help to answer those questions as well. So as a summary, like HR policies, they are important for the business, especially when the business is growing and developing. And they help us to communicate clear expectations for everyone in the workplace. We need HR policies to follow legal requirements, to follow the business, to make sure the business can grow, can function, can have a structure, and we also maintain the values or core values of our organization. And we can utilize resources and templates to make policies more efficient. Like again, like it is like I would just recommend to start from scratch, but there are lots of templates that can be used. AgriHR Toolkit has a lot of like policies and has an employee handbook as well that can easily be adapting for like landscaping, and some of them have been adapted for landscaping. And also, we need to make sure that the policies are up to date with the new developments, with the legislative, with the business environment. And like as I mentioned, like for example, flexible work hours, like benefits, if we're talking about like new generations or Gen Z, this is something that they would value at the workplace and they would like to see it in the policy. So it could be also a retention tool for your employees. And this is the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, I can be online for another 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, and take any questions about the HR policies. If there is a certain HR policy that you're struggling with or don't know what to do or need a template, feel free putting it in the chat and maybe we can help you.
Thanks, Victoria. Does anyone out there have a question of maybe something that's come up to them in HR or a common concern or something that keeps reoccurring? You know, you did, I mean, I'm not going to focus on substance abuse, but maybe that is something that is or could be a potential problem or somebody has come across. How have they handled with it? Or how do you handle, especially in landscaping, it being so seasonal, the flexibility? Any ideas or suggestions out there? It's a really quiet group.
Yes, it is a quiet. It's a lunchtime. So.
I know. Okay, well, I'm just going to put my email address in the chat in case anybody else did have any other questions. You know, I'm happy to connect with Victoria or whatever it might be. We hope you did find this information helpful. I did. It's quite interesting.
And again, like if there is a certain policy that you need a template or you're not sure like what to do, like yeah, I would be happy to help. And maybe we can like continue building HR practices for like small businesses, medium-sized businesses.
Oh, great. Thanks, Aurelia. Will this be available? We will have the recording now, correct?
Yes, it's been recorded. Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, this is great. I guess you have more time to have the rest of your lunch, or in my case, in British Columbia here, having your cup of tea.
Oh, enjoy your tea.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, bye-bye.